July 28, 1841. The heat in New York City was a physical weight, a thick, humid blanket that smelled of horse manure, coal smoke, and the brackish tide of the East River. On the other side of the water, in the pastoral getaway of Hoboken, New Jersey, the air was supposed to be cleaner. Two men, out for a stroll near the shaded cliffs of Sybil's Cave, noticed something caught in the river weeds. It bobbed with the gentle wake of a passing ferry. At first glance, a discarded bolt of silk. At second glance, a nightmare. It was the body of a young woman. Her face was a map of violence, bruised, swollen, and unrecognizable. Around her neck, a piece of her own lace collar had been torn and tied into a sailor's knot, so tight it was embedded in her throat. Her dress was shredded, her bonnet missing. When the news reached Manhattan, the city didn't just mourn, it ignited. Because this wasn't just any girl. This was Mary Cecilia Rogers. To the politicians, the writers, and the street thugs of Broadway, she was the beautiful cigar girl. Her face was the most famous in the city, and her death would become the most enduring puzzle in American history. To understand why Marilee's death paralyzed New York, you have to understand the world of the cigar emporium. In the 1840s, a tobacco shop wasn't just a store, it was a gentleman's club, a place for gossip, politics, and ogling. John Anderson, a savvy businessman, hired Mary Rogers to stand behind his counter at 319 Broadway. He knew exactly what he was doing. Mary was 20, with porcelain skin and a smile that made every clerk and congressman feel like the only man in the room.
Every young man in town has seen her. She was the star of the counter. Her beauty was of that rare, delicate order that commanded respect even from the most rakish of the Broadway dandies.
But Mary was more than a pretty face. She was a working-class girl supporting a widowed mother. She lived in a boarding house, navigated the flash age of New York, a time of gangs like the Bowery Boys and the Dead Rabbits, and she did so with a reputation that remained curiously spotless. Until 1838, 3 years before her death, Mary vanished for the first time. She left a suicide note on her mother's table and disappeared. The city was frantic. Then 6 days later, she simply walked back into the shop, cool as the Hudson, claiming she had been visiting a friend. The papers called it a publicity stunt, but in hindsight, it felt like a rehearsal. Now we reach the final Sunday, July 25th, 1841. Mary tells her fiancé, Daniel Payne, a man described as steady but perhaps a bit dull, that she is going to visit her aunt in New Jersey. It's a humid morning. She wears a white dress, a blue scarf, and a light bonnet. She walks out the door. She is seen by a few acquaintances on Broadway. She boards a ferry, and then the trail dissolves into the river mist. She never reaches her aunt's house. She never returns to the shop. 3 days later, the beautiful cigar girl is a Jane Doe on a Hoboken pier. The investigation that followed was a masterclass in incompetence. The New York Police Department, as we know it today, didn't exist. There were watchmen, men often hired for their brawn rather than their brains. The penny press took over the role of detective. The New York Herald and the Tribune fought a war for circulation over Mary's corpse. They published wild theories every morning. Theory 1, the gang. A group of rowdies supposedly snatched her from the Hoboken woods. Theory 2, the naval officer. A mysterious man in a dark cloak seen walking with her near the shore. Theory 3, the secret life. Rumors began to swirl that Mary wasn't the virgin clerk the public imagined. Then there was Daniel Payne, the grieving fiancé. Payne had an airtight alibi, but the public didn't care. They wanted a villain. Payne was harassed, followed, and broken. He spent months wandering the streets of New York, a ghost of a man. In October, he could take no more. He crossed the river to Hoboken. He bought a bottle of laudanum. He walked to the exact spot where Mary's body had been pulled from the water. He drank the poison and died on the shore. Next to him was a note. To the world, here I am, on the very spot. May God forgive me. To the police, this was a tragic postscript. To the public, it was a confession. But there was no evidence, no struggle, just a dead man on a cold beach. The case officially went cold. The Beautiful Cigar Girl was fading from the headlines, destined to be a forgotten footnote of the 19th century. Except for a man living in a small, cramped house in Philadelphia. A man who was broke, grieving, and brilliant. Edgar Allan Poe was obsessed. He had just invented the modern detective story with the murders in the Rue Morgue, and he saw in Marie Rogêt a chance to prove that his analytical method could work in the real world. He began writing The Mystery of Marie Rogêt.
I have handled the design in a very peculiar manner. I have imagined a series of nearly identical circumstances occurring in Paris. I have substituted Marie Rogêt for Mary Rogers. My goal is to show that the mystery can be solved by ratiocination.
Poe spent months poring over newspaper clippings. He noticed things the police missed. He argued that Mary wasn't killed by a gang. A gang wouldn't have tied a scarf in a specialist knot or left the body where it could be found so easily. He suggested the killer was a single individual, likely a military man, someone Mary knew and trusted. But as Poe was publishing his story in serial form, the real-world case took a bizarre turn. A woman named Frederica Loss, who ran an inn near the Hoboken shore, made a deathbed confession. She claimed that Marie Rogêt had come to her inn to undergo an illegal medical procedure, an abortion. She claimed Mary died on the table, and Frederica's sons had dumped the body in the river to protect the inn's reputation. This threw Poe into a panic. If Mary died from a botched medical procedure, his theory of a lone naval killer was wrong. His reputation as a master of logic was at stake. Poe did something unprecedented. He stalled. He delayed the final chapter of his story. When it finally went to print, he edited his conclusion to be vague, suggesting that while the procedure theory was possible, his detective Dupin still believed in a shadow figure. Poe used the ambiguity of the real case to shield his fiction. In the end, even the great Poe couldn't name the killer. He proved that life is often far more messy than the pages of a book. So, what really happened to Marie Rogêt? Was it a gang, a secret lover, or a tragic accident in the shadows of an illegal clinic? We will never know. The evidence is gone, washed away by a century of tides. But Marie Rogêt didn't die in vain. Because of her, the New York City Police Department was completely overhauled and professionalized in 1845. Because of her, Edgar Allan Poe refined the detective genre that gives us every episode of CSI or Sherlock Holmes today. She is the archetype of the victim, the beautiful, tragic girl whose death demands an answer. If you walk the streets of Lower Broadway today, past the glass towers and the Starbucks, you are walking over the ghosts of 1841. Somewhere beneath the concrete is the footprint of a cigar shop, where a young woman once smiled at the world and held its attention. Marie Rogêt remains a mystery, locked in the dark waters of the Hudson, forever 21, forever beautiful, and forever out of reach. What do you think really happened at Sybil's Cave? Was Poe right about the lone sailor, or was the deathbed confession of the innkeeper the final piece of the puzzle? Let me know your theories in the comments below. I'll be down there hearting the best ones. If you enjoyed this deep dive into historical true crime, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets the algorithm know you want more content like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a trip into the darker corners of history. Thanks for watching, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.